Welcome to the Chapel of Magdalen College, Oxford. In this film, we will be looking at some of the keyboard skills you need as an organ scholar. When you come to organ scholarship trials, you will not only be asked to play repertoire, you'll also be tested on some important skills. At Oxford, these comprise sight reading, transposition, score reading, and harmonization. And at Cambridge, sight reading, score reading, transposition, and an oral test. Cathedral or parish church organ scholarship auditions will almost certainly include some combination of these things too. There is more information about Oxford and Cambridge requirements on both university websites. Fluency in these skills is important because you will not only need them at trials, you'll also need them in your daily life as an organ scholar, and indeed in a music career generally. If you've never worked on these skills before, don't worry, because Mark Williams, the Informator Choristarum of Magdalen College, or Director of Music, is now going to suggest ways of practicing 3 of them: sight reading, score reading, and transposition. We've also provided a list of printed resources to help you with these skills, including help with learning how to harmonize, a topic too big to address in this film. For all work on keyboard skills, you should keep the following general technical points in mind. Don't crane forward towards the music desk. It's not a good position from a psychological standpoint. It creates tension, and it makes it harder for you to look ahead. Keep upright and relaxed. You will get a better bird's eye view that way. Keep the back wide and your arms reasonably relaxed. Don't let the elbows collapse into your rib cage. This makes it much harder to make quick but relaxed movements or to execute leaps and react to things that take you by surprise. Keep the eyes moving forward at all times. Do not stop, no matter what happens. Your primary job is to play something in the correct rhythm and tempo. Believe it or not, playing the right notes is not as important as playing the right rhythm. A point about looking ahead: the eyes are most likely to stop moving forward when you make a mistake or at the end of a line of music. This is a natural habit, and daily practice will train the eyes. Choose the right tempo for the piece. Often a tempo will be suggested, as it is in RCO diploma exams, and you need to adhere to it as much as possible. If you can't pick metronome speeds out of the air yet, start trying to develop this facility. It's pretty easy to learn 60 beats per minute, set a stopwatch or metronome ticking, and figure out something to say between each second. Once you have a good feel for 60, it's not hard to find other tempi. 120 is twice as fast, count 3 against 2 to find 90, etc.
We're going to look at a set of tests that were used at the organ scholarship auditions in Oxford a couple of years ago. All organ applicants were asked to take these tests, and for scholarships at the majority of colleges, these are the standards to which you should be working. However, at some of the bigger colleges, directors of music may ask you to demonstrate other skills, such as improvising or taking a rehearsal with children from the piano, and you may be given a more advanced set of tests as well. First, we turn to sight reading. You'll see that the registration is set for you. You then have 60 seconds to read through the test silently before playing it. How you use those 60 seconds is obviously very important. It's already been mentioned that to make the piece sound convincing, playing it rhythmically is the most important task. So first we have to ascertain how we're going to count. Here we can see that we're in 3/4 time with constant quaver movement. You'll see also that the piece starts with an upbeat figure beginning halfway through the second beat. So it might be most helpful for you to subdivide the beat, at least initially, 1 and 2 and 3, and so forth. This allows you to count yourself in accurately at the start of the piece. 1 and 2. Subdividing will also help enormously if the principal note values of the piece happen to change. For example, if a piece written mainly in quavers suddenly changes into minims or crotchets. That doesn't happen here, but subdividing might still be useful in places like bar 6 or bar 10, where we change manuals and need not to linger too long on the notes that fall on the second beat. While you're deciding how to count the piece, get an idea of the appropriate tempo as well. Look at the metronome marking, crotchet equals 63. That shouldn't be a difficult tempo to establish. The importance of being able to find 60 beats per minute has already been mentioned, and this is roughly the same. Next, look at the key signature and any accidentals. We're in A major, but notice that we have an F natural almost immediately. In fact, chromaticism is very much a feature of this piece. You're likely to get some unexpected chords and harmonies as a result, so it's very important to keep going, even if what you hear takes you by surprise. It's helpful to do a brief harmonic analysis if you have time, because often accidentals will point to modulations within the piece. At the very least, note the cadence points. Next, look at any organ management instructions. Notice that you start with the right hand on the swell and the left on the grate. The right hand drops down to the grate in bar 6 and then returns to the swell in bar 10. It's joined by the left hand on the swell in bar 12, while the right hand drops down to the grate. The left hand then drops to the grate in bar 16, and the right hand returns to the swell for its last two notes. Notice also the meno mosso in bar 16. It can be helpful, if you have time, to practice these manual changes silently. There aren't any registration changes in this particular piece, but you may be asked, for example, to remove or to add the grate to pedal coupler. You'll see that the piece also has a lot of phrase markings. Following these as carefully as you can will help you convey the character of the piece. This may seem like a lot to look for in 60 seconds, but with practice and with time, you'll get quicker at noticing the points on the page and processing the information as quickly as possible. Once your 60 seconds are up, it's time to start. Take a deep breath, count yourself in, and be careful not to start too fast. Nerves and adrenaline can often make us pick a tempo that's a bit too rushed. It's very important to stay calm and relaxed. Be still and centered. Play firmly enough into the keys and pedals that you feel confident, but don't thump the keys. In this piece, the temptation will be to rush the manual changes, but try not to do that. A singer wouldn't clip the C sharp in the melody of bar 6, for example. He or she would finish that phrase musically. You should do the same. You're trying to perform the piece, remember, not just give an accurate representation of the notes. Letting the music ebb and flow will keep you relaxed, will give you time to look ahead, and, most importantly, will translate into the most musical performance. I made a deliberate slip in bar 15 where I played a G natural instead of a G sharp in the left hand at the beginning of the bar. But I kept going in order to show you how important it is that a mistake doesn't derail you. If I'd stopped or panicked at that point, it would have been much more intrusive than that wrong note was. If you know that sight reading something of this level of difficulty is too much for you at the moment, please don't worry. You can build up to this level by starting with something that's easier until you feel more confident. A good way to practice sight reading is to use a mix of material. Choose some things that are technically fairly simple and that you feel you can perform really well. This will boost your confidence and allow you to focus on really performing the music. Then push yourself with something that challenges you, where you might have to keep going in spite of making a few mistakes. Whatever the level of difficulty, you should go through the same 60 seconds of preparation that we've looked at so far. Here's the score reading test from the Oxford Organ Scholarship Trials a couple of years ago. You'll see that you're expected to read a 4-part score using treble and bass clefs, with the tenor line written in the treble clef but played an octave lower. The registration is set so you don't need to worry about that in this test. You have just 30 seconds to look through this piece before you play, so there isn't much time. There's no tempo indication here, but you'll have to find a speed that's appropriate for the music. Despite the piece being written in semi-breves, minims and crotchets, in keeping with a lot of early music, it doesn't want to move too slowly. Minim equals 60 might be just about right. Just note that if you're counting in minims, you'll be subdividing the beat into crotchets, which means that the first bar is counted like this. 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. It's worth making the point here that a lot of early music is written in longer note values, so it's a good idea to practice as much of this material as you can, as it's often used for score reading tests for diplomas and trials. When we score read a 4-part score like this, it's generally a good idea to play the top 2 lines with the right hand and the bottom 2 with the left hand. Although, here, where you have only 2 lines in the first 3 bars, you probably don't need to adopt that approach until bar 4, like this. Your job is now to look for exceptions to this division of parts between the hands. For example, in bar 7, the top vocal line is far above the rest of the parts. You'll need to have your left hand play the E in the alto part. There may also be places where vocal lines cross or where the bass is far below the rest of the texture. We don't have that here, but we do have a place in bar 9 where the alto and tenor briefly meet. You might also wish to take the tenor voice briefly with the right hand in bars 6 and 7, but be careful because your right hand needs to prepare for that top G. Once you've looked at all these places silently, your 30 seconds will almost certainly be up and you'll need to begin. Again, take a deep breath and play the notes firmly enough to feel confident, but don't pound the keys. You're reading 4 staves, not 3, and it's important to read horizontally as well as vertically. You need to train your eye to scan the score in a steady and calm zigzag pattern, i.e. moving up and down the score from top to bottom to see how the music will sound at any point, and across the score to follow the individual lines. In polyphonic music of this nature, often a line will be repeated or imitated later. See, for example, the soprano and tenor lines at the opening, and you will find yourself remembering as much as reading. Above all, don't forget that what you're trying to demonstrate is that in practical terms, you can support a choir learning this piece of music. Keep going no matter what happens, even if you have to drop a voice for a bar. The most important things are a consistent pulse and reliable rhythm. If you're just starting to learn to score read, you can begin by reading just 2 parts of a 4-part score at a time, and gradually moving on to 3 parts and then 4 parts. And remember that working at this particular skill will be of enormous value if you come to conduct a choir or an orchestra. The conductor's job is to be aware of all the parts on the page at the same time. Let's move on to transposition. Here is an Oxford Organ Trials transposition test. Usually at any organ scholarship audition, you'll be asked to transpose a hymn up or down a tone or semitone. The same is true for the ARCO exam. You'll need to play the bass line with the pedals, as it says here, and to adhere to any tempo indications given. If no tempo is indicated, you'll need to choose a tempo that gives a good musical result. Here, that would probably be at least crotchet equals 90. The best thing you can do before you transpose is try to hear as much of the hymn in your head as you can before you launch in. This will mean establishing your pulse and tempo, taking careful note of the key signature, looking at cadences and modulations, and noting accidentals. Paying attention to the bass and soprano lines is particularly important if you're pressed for time. The bass line will give you the clearest indication of the harmony, and the soprano line will be what the congregation are singing. If you spend any time studying figured bass, try to bring those skills into play here. Which chords are in root position, 5-3, which are in first inversion, 6, or second inversion, 6-4, etc. Look for anything unusual. For example, we see quaver motion in the tune in bar 13 for the first time. It also comes at the start of a new line, so could easily catch you by surprise if you haven't made a note of it. As you play, be aware not only of the harmonic content, but also the intervallic content. Being aware of the intervals within the individual lines can be really helpful. Down a third, down a fourth, up one, same note, scale, down a fifth. And then up a tone, down a third, down a fourth, up one, same note, scale, down a fifth. As in all other keyboard tests, it's really important to keep going. A singing congregation or choir will be much more disturbed by inaccuracies in the pulse or rhythm than they will be by a wrong note or chord. You might try practicing transposition with a metronome. Even if you set it very slow at first, it will prompt you to move to the next chord whatever happens and encourage you to keep going. Again, consider these two examples. Which do you think deserves better marks? If a 4-part texture is too much for you at the moment, please don't worry. You can build up to 4 parts slowly, perhaps beginning with the soprano and alto parts in the right hand, the tenor and bass parts in the left hand, and then transfer the bass part to the pedal, adding in the tenor part, then the alto and soprano, and eventually you get to 4 parts, but there's no need to hurry. The important point to make about all of these keyboard skills is the only way to build fluency is through daily practice. You're teaching your brain to process an awful lot of information on the page as quickly and efficiently as possible, and in the case of transposition, to play notes other than the ones you see on the page in front of you. It will take time, and it is difficult. Your teacher can monitor your progress in lessons and can make helpful suggestions about techniques, etc. But ultimately, it's up to you to put in the time. That time will be well spent, not only in helping you gain and hold an organ scholarship, but also in terms of helping you to develop your general musicianship.